Hi guys, thanks for checking in. In this video lesson, your learning target is to be able to find the x and y intercepts of a linear equation. Now let's recap what we've kind of been talking about before we move ahead and really talk about what x and y intercepts are. Although truth be told, we've already been talking about y-intercept. So I'm going to show you a way to calculate a y-intercept today, and then I'm going to show you what an x-intercept is as well. But for the recap, a linear equation in slope-intercept form is this. Y equals mx plus b, right? You've seen this, you've heard me talk about it, we've been working with it for a couple weeks now, where m is the slope and b is the y-intercept. Okay, and that's really convenient when the equation is written in that format, y equals mx plus b. But they aren't always written in that exact format, so we've even done some practicing with rearranging these linear equations. And you're going to see today that they are not all perfectly arranged in this slope-intercept form. But now for just a minute, let's talk about this term right here. This number that sits out here to the right-hand side of a slope-intercept form, that is called the y-intercept. And we've been talking about y-intercepts for a couple of days. We have even gone so far as to graph a line on the coordinate plane based on knowing where the y-intercept is and then using the slope as your driving directions to get you to the next point and to the next point and to the next point. So, still recapping here. The y-intercept is the point at which your line crosses through the y-axis. So if I have an equation and the y-intercept is positive 2, that would mean your starting point for your line would be from the origin up roughly 2 units, and that would be your starting point, and then you would use your slope, whatever the slope would be in the equation, to find your next point and your next point and your next point, and you would connect those points so that you have a straight line. So the y-intercept is where the line crosses through the y-axis. So if that's true, what do you suppose the x-intercept is? Did you guess that? That is the point at which the line crosses through the x-axis. So, if you know the y-intercept, and if you can find the x-intercept, which I'm going to show you how to do, you can graph the line. If you know where it crosses the y-axis and where it crosses the x-axis. Okay, so in a nutshell, that's what we've been talking about, and that's what we're going to continue talking about today. We're going to continue talking about y-intercepts, and we're going to add in now the idea of an x-intercept. So definitely some writing, some really valuable notes on this next slide. I highly encourage you to write this down. As far as finding x and y-intercepts, remember, an intercept is where a line crosses over an axis. You know what, I think I still have some students who are still a little confused about which axis is which. The y-axis is the one that is vertical, remember y to the sky, and the x-axis is the horizontal axis that goes from left to right. That might be a good thing to write down in your notes. So here now in blue, the x-intercept is where the line crosses through the x-axis, and the y-intercept is where the line crosses through the y-axis. And since we've already been talking about the y-intercept in previous lessons, you might also remember that we refer to the y-intercept as b, right? Y equals mx plus b. So that number out in that position, known as b, is the y-intercept. right there. So again, I feel like I've said it 5 times already, but I'm gonna continue to say it. We're going to be figuring out where our line is going to cross through the y-axis and the x-axis. And I'm going to show you how to do all of this using algebra, using calculations, okay? So it's a lot of like solving equations today, but they aren't hard equations. Here's how you do it. Again, definitely going to want to put this slide on pause and write this stuff down. This is step by step how to do this. To find the x-intercept, you're going to plug in a 0 for the y value in your linear equation. Then you're going to solve the equation for x. So you'll have an answer like x equals 2. The answer that you get is the x-intercept. That is the point on the x-axis where the line crosses. So there's an example here. Y equals 3x minus 6. For the x-intercept, you need to plug a 0 in for the y. So that's what this is. So now I have 0 equals 3x minus 6. I need to solve the equation for x. So I'm trying to find out this value right there. So I need to move that minus 6 to the other side. And how do you do that? You add 6. So I'd add 6 here, and I add 6 here. And those cancel. So now I have 6 equals 3x. You should know that we now need to divide by 3 on both sides. And the x-intercept is 2. That means on the coordinate plane, on the x-axis, if you count over 2, that's where my line is going to cross through the x. But I don't know where it crosses through the y-intercept yet. We have to calculate that as well. So let's go down here and do that. For the y-intercept, you plug a 0 in for the x value. Solve the equation for y, and the answer you get is the y-intercept. Now, it's the same equation as it was when we were doing the one just above. It's y equals 3x minus 6, right? Same equation. I plug a 0 in for the x, so it's right here. And 3 times 0 is 0, so that kind of goes away. And now I have y equals negative 6. So this is your y-intercept, negative 6. Now, if I go back up to the top, I know that you've seen what I wrote over here in blue. Since this is written in slope-intercept form, it's pretty easy to find that the y-intercept was negative 6 just to begin with, without even doing the algebra on this one. But remember, they aren't all going to be arranged in slope-intercept form, so we need to practice the algebra behind it, plugging in the 0 for the x and solving for y. Okay, so I've done the calculation. I know that my line crosses through the y-axis now at a negative 6. So I'm going to go back up to my coordinate plane, where I plotted my x-intercept, and I'm going to plot my y-intercept. What did we say it was? We said negative 6, right? Let's imagine that negative 6 is somewhere down here. If you recall, this was positive 2. Now, I know my x-intercept, I know my y-intercept. My line goes just like that. Well, ideally, it would go through perfectly through both of those points. All right? So, let's practice. I've got 4 or 5 more that we can do. Here we go. Find the x and y intercepts. We have to solve each of these equations twice. The first time, we're going to plug a 0 in for the y, and then we're going to plug a 0 in for the x, and we're going to see what answers we get. Okay? So, for the first time, plug a 0 in for the y. So I have 5x minus 3 times 0 equals 15. Okay? So, I have 5x. Negative 3 times 0 is 0. Right? 5x. So now I just have 5x equals 15. Divide by 5. My x-intercept is 3. Does that make sense? All I did was put a 0 in for the y, which basically makes that y term go away. and then you solve for x. Now I'm going to do it again, and I'm going to solve for y. I'm going to plug a 0 in this time for the x. So now I'm going to have 5 times 0 minus 3y equals 15. 5 times 0 is 0. So that just goes away. So I have a negative 3y equals 15. Divide by negative 3, divide by negative 3. Y is negative 5. I could, on a coordinate plane, plot where x is 3, plot where y is negative 5, connect the dots, and make a straight line. Okay, let's try some more. For the next one, 4y equals 3x plus 12. We're going to plug a 0 in for the y. 4 times 0 equals 3x plus 12. 4 times 0 is 0. Okay, I'm trying to solve for x. So I need to move that 12 to the other side. So I'm going to subtract 12 here and there, right? So I've got a negative 12 equals a 3x. Divide by 3. X is negative 4. Now, in green, kind of down here to the right, I'll try to squeeze it in. We're going to plug the 0 in this time for the x. 4y equals 3 times 0 plus 12. You see what I did? This time I put the 0 where the x was. 3 times 0 is 0. So 4y equals 12. Divide by 4, divide by 4. The y-intercept is 3. Okay, so now again, I could go up on the y, positive 3 and put a dot. Look over to the x-axis, go to the left, negative 4, put a dot. I could connect those dots and make a straight line. Those are your intercepts. It's where the line crosses through the x and y axis. Let's get some more room here. Let's do these two. Again, plug in a 0 for the y. (2x plus 0 is negative 8. That 0 goes away. So 2x is negative 8. Divide by 2, divide by 2. X is negative 4. That's your x-intercept. Now we'll do it for the y. Solving for y, put a 0 in for the x this time. There's my 0. The y is there. 2 times 0 is 0. So that 0 goes away. And we see that y equals negative 8. That's your y-intercept. It crosses through the y at a negative 8. It crosses through the x at a negative 4. You could draw that line. The key thing to remember here is that you're solving these equations twice. You put an x as 0 once, and you put a y as 0 for the next time. Ready? We're going to plug a 0 in for y. There it is. X plus 0 is 2. The 0 goes away. This one's easy. The x-intercept is 2. Now, we plug a 0 in for the x. We keep the y. 0 plus y is just y. And we see that y equals 2. Well, that was a nice one. So you could go on the y, up 2, put a point. On the x, you could go right 2 and put a point, and you could draw your line. Just using the x and y intercepts. Last one, and then we're done. Find the x and y intercepts, and then graph. Here we go. Solve this thing twice. Better give myself some more room. I have a feeling I might need it. There we go. I'm going to plug a 0 in for that y. (2 times 0 is 0. Trying to solve for x. I got to get that minus 6 over to the other side. So we're going to add 6. Divide by 3, divide by 3. X is 2. So right now on the x-axis, which is this one, I'm going to go over 2 and put a big fat point. Now I'm going to solve it again, but I'm going to put the 0 in where the x is. There it is. 3 times 0 is 0. So 2y equals negative 6. Divide by 2, divide by 2. Y equals negative 3. So my y-intercept, that's this guy. I go down 3 and put a big fat point. Now you can connect those two intercepts, and that is the graph of that linear equation. Fantastic. We will be practicing this skill using problems during class time. Thanks for watching.